Picture here of downtown Chicago. There's a crane in the sky, and everybody, it is lowering the Christmas tree into Millennium Park. So we're getting ready for the holidays, and we hope that they're happy holidays, but we know for a lot of people, of course, there's so much going on right now that even kind of complicates how you look at these next few weeks and into Thanksgiving and, of course, into the Christmas holiday season. Right now, we want to talk about jobs and the economy and how it's impacting so many people right now. The government shutdown, that it's in its 36th day, making new territory. We are now making history. The last one was 35 days, and we have no end necessarily in sight, although it does seem like maybe there's a bit of conversation happening today that could be positive in Washington where this is concerned. I'll go ahead and bring in Bankrate Senior Economic Analyst Mark Hamrick to talk a little bit about what you're seeing and where we go from here while we're in this shutdown. Thank you so much for your time.
Good to be with you.
I really appreciate this. I think, it's just one of the number one things. I mean, we had election day for so many different states yesterday, and one of the things in the exit polls that kept coming up time and time again that was number one on people's mind right now, and that is the economy. How do you think this prolonged government shutdown is going to have an impact, after they say, okay, we're opening things back up? What's the impact even after that?
It's a complicated situation to say the least, but this does essentially put economic activity on a slower trajectory. It essentially hinders momentum and it adds to confusion and uncertainty. And that uncertainty affects everybody ranging from all of us consumers who don't have a high degree of confidence about what the outlook will bring for the U.S. economy because we've had a cutoff in federal statistical data. As of this coming Friday, it will be 2 straight monthly jobs reports that we're missing. So we have to look to the private sector for that. Of course, there's all the federal workers who are adversely affected, and it's sort of like choose your poison. Do you want to go to work without being paid or essentially have to stay at home without being paid? Those are suboptimal options to begin with. And then there's this range of negative effects that affect everybody from food stamp recipients. And I don't know if everybody really knows how widely utilized this benefit is. It's 1 in 8 Americans. So if you know a handful of people or interact with people in your everyday life, it's a pretty good chance somebody you're interacting with is facing the potential reduction or cutoff in food stamps or the SNAP program. And of course, air traffic control is what ultimately sort of shook lawmakers to their would-be senses in early 2019 because of the problem that controllers basically staged a sick out. And once that commerce, air travel, was severely hindered, that's what made them vote to essentially reopen and fund the government.
Yeah, with it stretching out, can I ask you how much of an impact it would have for Chicago specifically? I mean, how big could the job hits be here?
Well, I don't think, other than the fact that it's a mighty, historic, and wonderful city, I don't think it has outsized impacts on Chicago or reduced impacts. It's kind of parallel to what's happening throughout the country. You have 2 very major airports that are reliant, for example, on air traffic control and the commerce flowing as a result of that. You have consumers who are saying, this is sort of a fog we're operating in right now. That hurts business leaders. That hurts consumers who are already weighing the impacts of elevated prices and inflation, which is still high. So, I would say Chicago's like the rest of the country, where it's sort of a situation where we hope it ends sooner rather than later. And each day it goes on, it's been estimated that this is costing the economy $15 billion a week. It's hard to get our arms around that, but that's a negative impact, and not all that will be recovered.
Yeah, a lot of this is hard for everyday folks to kind of wrap your brain around, unless it is directly impacting your wallet, your livelihood. Can you break down how important the jobs report actually is?
It's one of two primary economic reports that we really do prioritize every month. And the health of the job market isn't just about people who are out of work or those who are looking for work. It's about the sense of job security that pretty much most households are reliant on a wage earner or two for their income and essentially the quality of their financial lives. How do we achieve our financial goals? And so it just so happens we've been through a lot, of course, since the pandemic, where we shut down the economy, then it reopened quickly. There was a so-called red hot job market that emerged in 2022, and it's been normalizing since then. The good news is that the unemployment rate nationally has remained fairly strong, 4.3%. And just today, ADP, the private payrolls processor, told us that we did have jobs creation last month. That's in the absence of the federal snapshot that typically would have been released this coming Friday. And it's roughly on par with the level of jobs creation that we believe is needed to keep the unemployment rate steady, most recently measured again at 4.3%. Obviously, Chicago has its own dynamics and challenges, as does any locality. Mm-hmm. So, that's for local people to slice and dissect. But I think that, we've gone from a situation where workers are really seen as calling the shots a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We had 2 jobs open for every unemployed job seeker. That ratio now has moved back to 1-to-1, which is considered more normal. But anecdotally, we're seeing more large companies announce layoffs. Mm-hmm. We're seeing longer job search times, and the job market in particular for new college grads is as weak as it's been in some time.
Oh my goodness, that was going to be my next question to you. As you were speaking, I was just thinking about, this time in people's lives where they're thinking, I'm going to go out and conquer the world. If you are someone who just graduated from college, or if you're speaking to someone who's getting ready to graduate from college, what's your advice? Or maybe the parents of those young people, what's your advice to them right now, seeing what you're seeing?
I would say, first of all, keep hope alive. I mean, we're still hiring 5 million people a month in this country. It's that the level of jobs creation has been flatlining in recent months, or earlier this year we actually saw a contraction in a given month. But that's really more for economists and investors and business leaders, central bankers to worry about. I think for the average job seeker out there, there still is opportunity, and it really obviously depends on what kind of skill you command, right? So if you're in sort of the area where there's not as much demand for workers right now, it's going to be a tougher slog. But if you're somebody who possesses skills, and that could be anybody from a plumber to an electrician, I'm talking about sort of traditional trades, to someone who's in the heart of AI or business consulting for the right sectors of business. And we know the stock market's been red hot, for example. That benefits people who are fortunate enough to have exposure to the stock market. Home prices have been through the roof, literally 50% increase since 2020. Yeah. There's this sort of K-shaped economy that we talk about, where those who are doing well are doing better, and those who are just sort of marching in place are struggling more.
Yeah, you mentioned the stock market. Each day, typically, we will take a look at the big board sometime during our time here on Chicago Live, and it does seem like it's been mixed. Can you talk about the way uncertainty then affects the stock market?
Yeah, I would separate that even out a little bit more, and that is that for some months now, it's been really the large technology companies that have driven the stock market's performance, because when we're talking about investments that businesses are making, it's primarily in the space related to AI and data centers needed to essentially power AI. With every query, electricity is needed, and you have a data center that has to sort of run the numbers on that, the ones and zeros in computing. And so this is a very bizarre situation in a way that for some is reminiscent to the dot-com era, where there's this red hot sector of the economy and everything else is just sort of hanging in there. And so when we see that sort of divide in the stock market, the concern that some people have is perhaps the prices or the valuations of the so-called Magnificent Seven may be out of whack, but declaring a bubble is very precarious business, and even worse is trying to time the stock market. So our advice to the typical investor, most of whom are investing in the market for the purpose of their retirement savings, is
Mm-hmm.
slow and steady wins the race here, and trying to time the market really is a fool's errand. Even the best, quote unquote, investors in the institutional investing game have a very, very hard time doing that well.
So, what are the things that you feel like will rebound the quickest or the slowest coming out of the shutdown? And we were taking a look at the big board when you were speaking a moment ago. We're in the green for now, so that was good to see. But but going back to this, what will rebound the quickest, and what's going to take some time?
Well, I think first of all, we have to sort of level set with what was happening before the shutdown 36 days ago. And the primary talking point or topic of conversation among several was, of course, tariffs. Those aren't going away. We're still dealing with historically high tariffs, really the highest since the era of the Great Depression. And we have the global economy that we all have to interact with, through which international trade flows. So those are themes which are going to continue. But more to your point, there will be a fair amount, maybe the lion's share of economic activity which has been disrupted by the shutdown will be restored. But we have to think about for mid-sized and small businesses which don't have the capital or broadly the resources to adjust during these periods. And so if you think about, for example, a mom and pop sandwich shop that's located near a federal building, and all of a sudden the people are not going into that federal building now because of the shutdown, that mom and pop sandwich shop is not going to get 2 or 3 times the sandwich business restored once that resumes. And so there is long-lasting economic damage that does occur there, not to mention the fact it'll take a while for federal workers, including air traffic controllers, the TSA agents, and everybody else, just to get their pay restored, assuming that the Trump administration follows the law on that, and that's been a question mark. So there will be some economic activity which is not restored, but the economy has been, we have to acknowledge, much more resilient over the last several years than most had predicted. We can think back about 3 years ago when the Federal Reserve started raising interest rates and a recession was seen as many as a certainty. Now, having said that, we didn't have the technical definition of a recession met, but many individuals and households feel as if their personal finances have been affected by inflation in a way that feels very similar to a recession.
Yeah, yeah. You just have to wonder when things will turn around. Thank you so much for your time. Mark Hamrick, Bankrate Senior Economic Analyst. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, it's 1:31. We'll take another quick break. Welcome back, everyone. It's 1:33 right now, and we are awaiting a press conference to take place any moment now here in Chicago, where Congressman Quigley and others will address a situation, an immigration enforcement effort that took place first thing this morning, where an educator was detained inside of a daycare in front of children. So just as soon as that begins, you can see it's all set up for them to speak. As soon as it begins, we will go to that live. But while we have some time, as they are getting ready for that press conference, we want to talk about the election night that was last night, the day that was yesterday, and what's coming out of it, particularly for Virginia. Last night in her victory speech, Abigail Spanberger said that her husband told her daughter, she has 3 daughters, your mom's going to be the next governor of Virginia. And that's the first time anyone has ever said that to anyone, if you think about it, because she is now the first female governor of Virginia. I want to take we want to go to Guy Lambert with Fox 5 in D.C. to talk a little bit more about the history that was made. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, I got to tell you, it was truly a monumental night last night. You hit the nail right on the head with regard to history being made. Abigail Spanberger now becoming the first female governor in the Commonwealth. We're talking about the state of Virginia. This is the 33rd time that has happened. And just to be honest, the room filled with electricity as she took to the podium to make mention of what's to come. When thinking about Ms. Spanberger, she ran on several things. One happened to be the economy, stating that under her leadership, the economy would completely change for those who have been stricken, if you will, since President Trump resumed office. She also made mention of abortion, which is a very big issue in the state of Virginia. Why? Well, because it happens to be one of the southern states that to this day, they are still enacting laws that really surround protecting those against abortion. Last but not least, it all surrounded DOGE. Virginia is a state just outside of the nation's capital. So many folks affected by DOGE, government workers at that. And so for her to stand up and say, you know what, yet again, under my leadership, that will all come to an end. That's one of the main reasons why she is now the governor-elect of the state of Virginia.
Very interesting stuff there. Yes, with the heavy amount of federal workers there in Virginia, that would be one of the top issues, of course, for Virginia. Let me ask you this. She kind of ran as a centrist, if you will, center-left type of Democrat. The same thing for New Jersey's governor-elect now, Mikey Sherrill, as opposed to New York City's new mayor-elect, Zohran Mamdani. Can you talk about why that was important?
Well, I think for, yet again, you have to look at where she came from and what she wanted to get across. She really campaigned as an adversary of President Trump and yet again tried to position herself to say, you know what, things will completely change. Obviously, she was doing that in a state that, well, quite honestly, last time when they voted for a Republican governor, Governor Glenn Youngkin. And so she positioned herself to be somewhat in the center, not to offend those that, well, quite honestly, were undecided at that time.
Okay, and now we have to see what's next for Glenn Youngkin. The story, I'm sure, will be followed in the days, weeks, and months to come. What's next for him? Thank you so much, Guy, for your time.
You got it.
Okay, 1:37 right now, and I do believe that press conference is beginning with Congressman Quigley. Let's listen in. Okay, apparently we're not as close as we thought to this beginning here, but let me again just kind of tell you a little bit about why they have gathered. They have gathered as a result of enforcement effort that took place this morning. Let's listen in now.
What started off as a normal day for the students, parents, and teachers at Rayuto de Sol Spanish Immersion Early Learning Center quickly devolved into a nightmare. This morning, ICE agents followed a teacher into the facility without a warrant and abducted her in front of her students. This woman is a trusted, loved member of her community. with a work permit who has dedicated her life to caring for children. What happened today at Rayuto del Sol has left children, their families, and the community traumatized. Let me be clear. No child should ever be terrorized in their school. No parent should ever have to explain to their child why their teacher was dragged away by armed officers. And no teacher should fear that showing up to work to care for and educate kids could result in their arrest. This is a parent's worst nightmare. You drop your kids off at daycare or school every day and assume they're going to be safe. This is a violation of public trust and should send shivers down the spine of every parent. Prior to this administration, the DHA had clear guidelines against conducting enforcement in sensitive locations like schools, daycares, and places of worship. Today's incident shows not only a blatant disregard for those norms, it shows this administration's contempt for public safety and a complete lack of humanity. To the families, educators, and neighbors who have joined us today, thank you for your courage and your support. We see you and we are standing with you. We are calling for immediate answers and accountability from the Department of Homeland Security. We will not be silent while educators, parents, business owners, and other essential members of the community are treated like criminals. What happened here today is unacceptable, and we will not allow it to continue. I'd now like to bring on a representative of Rayuto del Sol and a parent of a child at the facility, Maria Guzman.
Thank you, Representative. My name is Maria Guzman. I am, as the representative said, a parent at Rayuto del Sol. I am also an employee for the city of Chicago, and I am a proud daughter of immigrants of this country. And what has happened today is domestic terrorism. It is a violation of our rights. It is a violation of these children's rights. It is a violation of these teachers' rights who have a right to work in this country and care for our most vulnerable kids. What they are doing is terrorizing our community, terrorizing our culture. These children who have pride in their culture, the parents who are not Latin American or speak Spanish are bringing these children to this daycare because they want their kids to have access to diversity, access to other experiences. That is what founded this country. We are a country of immigrants, and it is absurd and horrific that they have now targeted our daycare centers. Are folks not concerned about this? This is horrific. They have crossed a line. Our schools, our libraries, our churches should be safe places for our children. As parents, what do we tell our children? That those who are in law enforcement are folks who they should be scared of? We have communities who have had that fear forever. How is that okay with folks who are watching this? If you have just sat on the sidelines and watched this happen to other people, they are coming after all of our children. We all need to activate and ensure that this is something that does not continue happening. As the representative of the parent group of Rayito, both current parents and former parents, this is a community. This is a family of teachers who care for our children in the most unimaginable way possible. This is like our grandparents who care, our aunts and our cousins who care for these children. And they have a right to feel safe at their place of work. As parents, we demand the immediate release of this teacher to her family and to her community. That learning environments are viewed as sacred spaces where our children and their teachers don't have to worry about abductions and violence. Children should never have to witness such horrors, and schools should be safe. There were children in the building. There were babies in the building. They came into the building understanding it was a daycare. Federal agents have to be held accountable for entering the establishment without consent. They did not have a warrant. They did not have a warrant. This terror needs to end. ICE is terrorizing our country. This administration is terrorizing our country. How is the leader of this country, who many of our parents came here because they wanted a better future for their kids, how is President Trump okay with this happening? This is not okay. And all of the representatives who are still in support of him, absolutely horrific. These folks were willing to leave children unattended. They took a teacher and could have left children unattended. Think about that. For those of you who have children in daycare or at school, is it okay for them to just come in? Absolutely not. We need action. We need people to do and support our community, our Spanish-speaking community, our Latino teachers, daycare workers. Community is horrified. If you speak Spanish in front of one of these folks, you're a target. I have raised my children to believe that it is something to be proud of, that their grandparents came here to build all of us a better life. How is it possible? What do I tell them now? What do I tell my children? That they have to be embarrassed of their culture, that they have to hide and run because they cannot speak Spanish? I have raised my children to speak in Spanish because I am so proud. Everything that I have stood on and everything that I have done is falling apart. And we need all of you who are not part of this community to join us.
Representative Delia Ramirez, and before she begins, I want to thank my staff, and I know that she does as well. Our staffs are all working virtually around the clock, never more earning their pay. And a tragic irony, they're not getting paid. So we want to thank them, and I'd like to bring on Delia Ramirez.
Thank you, Congressman. You heard Maria just a moment ago. I was with her in the daycare this morning. As I wrapped up a live interview, I got calls that I needed to rush to the daycare. I talked to the parents that were there who said, I'm on my way to drop off my 15-month-old toddler at the parking lot. I see federal masked agents taking someone and rushing into the place that is sacred for my children. As I walked in and I talked to the teachers, one of them pregnant, afraid of the impact from today, going and hiding. Another one, someone that I personally know, hiding with a child she was taking care of because she was afraid that she may die today, while protecting and taking care of someone else's children. This is the force called Department of Homeland Security under Secretary Kristi Noem, an agency of terror. What happened today is despicable. It's unconscionable. It's unacceptable. And as the only member of Congress in this delegation in the Committee of Homeland Security, in the Committee of Jurisdiction, I want you to know that I'm going to be working with every one of my colleagues here, filing an investigation immediately of what's happening. There's also a bill that you should know about. It's called the Protecting Sensitive Locations Bill that we have filed in Congress. Yeah, Democrats don't have the majority. You don't have to be a Democrat to look at what happened today at Rayito del Sol and know that it was unacceptable. You don't have to be a Democrat to take your kids to a particular daycare. This could happen to anyone. And so there's about 100 members of Congress on the bill, and there's 215 Democrats in Congress. Today, as someone who's personally related to people who are being impacted right now, I call every one of my colleagues to sign onto that bill immediately. I also understand that we have a responsibility. We need to make sure that people understand that these businesses have rights, and we are going to do everything we can to help them uphold those rights. Those agents not just rushed in, they went in other rooms. Sorry that I'm stuttering because I'm still living the footage that I saw. They didn't just walk in chasing one person. They went into multiple rooms asking and looking for teachers while children were present. This is an agency that has gone rogue. And it's an agency that believes that as long as they can cover their face, they can get away with anything. It is why this immediate press conference was so important and why all of us are here, with the parents, with teachers, with someone who I just talked to an hour ago, and she said, Delia, I don't think I can go back to work tomorrow. I don't know that I'm safe, but I'm so proud that we protected those kids while we were there, because their number one priority is the care of our children. So look, we have a lot of work to do, and we're going to do it. I refuse to take any excuses that Democrats are in the minority, because this is a party of opposition to what we're seeing in the streets, and it is our responsibility to use every single tool at our disposal. And it's also incredibly important that we're doing this work in an intergovernmental collaboration. And that's why I'm so grateful for the leadership of our state legislators, our city council members, and others who are here with us today. No one else than an immigration attorney that happens to also be my state representative, who just recently passed legislation to protect our daycares from ICE. And so I'd like to introduce to you now Representative Lilian Jimenez.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Congressman Quigley, to Congresswoman Delia Ramirez for acting so fast, bringing us together today. What I want to say is that this day, unfortunately, is not unusual for many of us who have been working in the community. Every day we get calls like this, whether it's a healthcare center the other day, my son's school multiple times throughout the month, and today a daycare center. We are not okay. This type of trauma that's being put on our community is going to take all of us to change. In the Illinois State Legislature, we work together. We work together to pass HB 1312, which has a number of provisions, and the provision that I championed was regarding child care centers, because so many people didn't know that we were going to get to this point. But unfortunately, some of us saw the writing on the wall. Some of us listened and believed them when they said the things that they said. This weekend, our president said they haven't gone far enough. I'm sure people heard that. They haven't gone far enough. I don't know if it rang a bell for all of you, but when I saw those words, I almost shut down, because I have been living it for the last 30 to 60 days. And I understand that what he's telling these officers is to go harder, to be more vicious, to degrade these communities even more. And it's horrific and it's scary. And we're trying to ring the alarm bell here. That's why we're here. That's why you hear our voices trembling. But we are here because we are strong. In the Illinois legislature, we passed that bill. We passed that bill with a majority. And what it will do is instruct community centers, daycare centers, to understand what their rights are, to understand that they must lock the doors, to understand that they must train their staff, to understand that they must have conversations with family members, that they must have emergency contact information on file, that they must know what to do. Not if, but what we're seeing when parents are taken away, like we saw today. So we had the foresight, Latino Policy Forum, Illinois Coalition of Immigrant Refugee Rights, the Illinois Legislature, the House, the Senate, and very soon the governor. The governor will be signing that bill. He has told us he will be signing it. And I invite you all to be there that day, because we must continue to stand together in Illinois to show the rest of the country who we are and who they must emulate. Because Illinois is on the forefront of saving our communities and taking care of our communities. And with that, I'd love to introduce Commissioner Bridget Degnan.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank Congressman Quigley for bringing us all here together. This is a huge showing in such a short time after such a terrible, terrible tragedy that happened this morning. So good afternoon. My name is Bridget Degnan. I'm the Cook County Commissioner in the 12th District, which covers parts of Chicago's north and northwest side. The events that took place this morning at Rayito del Sol are absolutely horrifying. As a mother, as a North Center resident, and as a person with basic empathy, I'm appalled at what has become the abhorrent treatment of our neighbors daily. Child care centers used to be considered protected locations alongside churches and hospitals, keeping access to basic services free from fear. Trump and his Gestapo have made it clear that they believe no place is sacred. They've also made it clear that the legality of their actions has never really mattered. This morning's abduction shows no clear sign of a warrant, and ICE agents were observed violently dragging the Rayito del Sol employee out from the building. As the woman was forced into an arrest, she can be heard telling the agents that she has papers, a status that should be seen normally as a simple inquiry and confirmation, rather than a violent incident. This administration, and let's be clear, administration is a word we normally use to think about the administration of justice, something that is fair. This is a regime. This regime believes itself to be above the law, above decency, and has no regard for the trauma they inflict. So where does this leave us? We know organized community efforts are working. Every single person that is assisting with rapid response, handing out whistles, and engaging in school patrols is making the objective of these agents more difficult to achieve. Our state and local governments are stepping up through measures like the recently passed HB 1312, executive orders prohibiting ICE from using county and city property, and barring ICE from arresting our neighbors at courthouses without a judicial warrant. Protecting our courthouses, like protecting our neighbors, is a foundation of our sense of justice, and it is especially critical at the moment. We're going to have to fight tooth and nail to hold these immigration agents accountable, and the way that we do that is through our courts. So I urge everyone to continue to document with as much detail as possible, to engage in Court Watch, to support legal aid groups, and the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, and to each and every one of you to know your rights. Last night across the nation, we experienced a surge in hope. Affirmation that this country does not want to be subject to the cruelty of the Trump regime. That we do not just desire, but we demand and we deserve a nation that is one of morality and care for our neighbors. While we continue to experience these targeted attacks on our communities, we must let hope guide us, inspire us, and invigorate us, because this fight is far from over. I'd like to next invite up my good friend, County Commissioner Jessica Vasquez.
Good afternoon. My name is Jessica Vasquez. I'm 8th District Cook County Commissioner. First, I'd like to thank Congressman Quigley, Congresswoman Delia Ramirez for all of the support that they're providing to our communities. I will say that, a lot has already been said about what occurred this morning. To Representative Lillian Jimenez's point, we have been seeing these types of attacks in our communities for months. In January of 2025, we established the Northwest Side Rapid Response, which I am proud to be a co-chair of. The Northwest Side Rapid Response is a 500-plus volunteer network of residents who help document, provide legal resources, and mutual aid to families that have been targeted by this vicious administration through federal agents, as well as through increasing tactics that we are seeing from what we suspect are individuals undercover, perhaps also posing as federal agents. What we are doing with our Northwest Side Rapid Response Network is we are proactively patrolling areas in which we feel there is increased activity. You heard Commissioner Degnan talk about our school patrols. That is something that we are expanding. We are also looking to provide mutual aid support. As we see these snap cuts hit our neighborhoods, our neighbors are afraid to access resources. And so our network is working with Organized Communities Against Deportation, Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, Arise Chicago, the Resurrection Project, a lot of nonprofit organizations that have been doing this work for decades to provide the support that our residents need. I'm calling on our residents to be a part of the work, to please get involved in your local rapid response network, to please be a part of our school patrols, to participate in any event that you feel could be vulnerable for our communities. And if you would like to get involved, please feel free to reach out to my office, reach out to the representatives here. We would love to have you join us as we continue to document all of these incidents and protect our neighbors. Thank you. Next up, I'd like to invite Alderman Matt Martin.
Thank you, Commissioner, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm Alderman Matt Martin. I have the privilege of representing the 47th Ward, where Rayito del Sol is located. Like many parents across the city, I start off most of my mornings dropping my kids off at our local school. Some people think of doing school drop-offs as being a mundane activity, a chore, but that's not the case for me. Because I know what our schools provide, I know what they do for our students day in and day out, and I know how much excitement that provides my kids when we're walking to school every day, because they know what awaits them. It's not just learning their ABCs or learning math, it is learning how to be a kind and decent person. I think it bears emphasizing that our schools are our most precious spaces. They nurture and educate our most important, but also our most vulnerable community members. And they are places where everyone should feel safe and secure without exception, period. But this morning, as I responded to the school after being notified that ICE was there, I saw what happens when that feeling of safety is shattered. I saw how tirelessly parents and educators have worked over the years to create this sense of safety and security at Rayito del Sol, and how in a matter of seconds that can come undone. With regard to the educator here, I was heartened to see in the videos how many of her fellow educators came to her aid physically, telling these ICE agents, you can't be here. This is a school. There are children here. She has papers. But they ignored that. They ignored all of those pleas with, as Congresswoman Ramirez mentioned, at least one ICE agent going room to room, an armed ICE agent looking for adults, looking for people to question. And it's also important to emphasize that violent takings like this have been happening across our city for months. This is not new. And I speak for most every Chicagoan when I say we've had enough of these horrific actions. ICE's actions are not normal, and we're tired of saying that day in and day out. ICE's actions are causing chaos and fear and trauma, and we shouldn't have to keep saying that day in and day out. ICE's actions aren't keeping our communities safer, and we shouldn't have to keep saying that. We need this educator home immediately. Her family needs that, her students need that, her colleagues need that. But we also need ICE to stop terrorizing our community, because it started off on sidewalks, and then it was yards, and then it's hospitals, and now it is schools. And if we can't feel safe in our schools, where can we feel safe? As was mentioned over the weekend, President Trump said that ICE's actions haven't gone far enough. Everybody in this room, everyone I've spoken with today, whether they are an educator, a parent, or a student, they couldn't disagree more. So I would say in response to what President Trump said over the weekend, shame on you, President Trump, and shame on every single ICE agent who is continuing to terrorize our wonderful city. I would like to now bring up to the podium my good friend and colleague, Alderman Scott Waguespack.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alderman Scott Waguespack, 32nd Ward. And what we saw here today is absolutely appalling on all levels. When I look at a child over there and I think about a masked man coming after that child, after a caretaker who takes care of that child, that is the lowest of the low of humanity. You heard from Ms. Guzman about how difficult it was to be there, along with all these parents who are here today. And you have to imagine what that felt like, what that feels like to have a child torn out of your arms. And I know a little bit of what that feels like. When I was in the Balkans in the 90s, I watched as wars unraveled. And we saw people taking away children from their parents. This is the kind of activity that you think of in terms of what despots do, what dictators do. What happened in the Balkans ended up getting a president into The Hague. And maybe that's what somebody needs to be reminded of today, every single day that these actions take place. I look at my congressmen here, Congresswoman Ramirez, Congressman Quigley. They've been working on the Ukraine issue. And we see the same thing there, where a dictator goes into a country and says, I'm going to tear it apart because I don't like what you're doing. Tearing children away from their parents and hauling them away. Taking caretakers away. People at all levels. And that's what we're seeing here in the United States. This has to stop, and it has to stop today. I urge all people from all parties to stand up and say that this president, that Holman, that Nome, that Bovino have gone too far, and it needs to stop here. I'm confident that what my congressmen are doing is going to help with that problem, but Americans need to stand up and say enough is enough across this country, not just here in Chicago, not just in Illinois. A couple of my elected official colleagues said it well. Everyone needs to stand up. This isn't an issue for Chicago. It is an issue for every single American. And it is appalling to me as a father, as the husband of an immigrant, that I see this happening in my country, in our country. Everybody that's standing here today, I know that aldermen don't have the ability to change those laws, but everyone in this country does. Everyone can stand up and say enough is enough. So I am urging, as one big step, that federal judge Sarah Ellis enforce what she told Bovino he had to do. Because someday, somehow, the masked men will be unmasked. You can't hide behind those phones. You can't hide behind the receipts. You can't just walk away to your other state and think that you're going to get away with it. Because there will be a reckoning someday. And that reckoning will happen when Americans rise up and say we've had enough. Thank you.
President of SEIU Healthcare, Greg Kelly.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you for putting this together. Thank you as well, Congresswoman Ramirez. I am Greg Kelly, and I have the honor of serving as president of SEIU Healthcare, but I'm also a parent. My union is a union of care providers, including child care providers, who are essential to not only providing care and education to our children, but keeping working families and our state's economy growing. The work that they do is essential, but as we saw this morning, they are now in the crosshairs of this inhumane and unjust mass deportation campaign. So let's ground ourselves quickly in what this incident was. It was an overly aggressive, terrifying attack on someone who has made the commitment to care for our children. Someone who makes it possible for Chicago families to go to work, knowing that their children are safe. But this morning, parents can no longer be assured that their children are safe. To target and terrify children and care providers is unconscionable. These are not standard law enforcement actions. They are acts of cruelty and intimidation, especially conducted in places meant to nurture and to protect. What happened in this morning is a serious escalation that endangers all of our children and all of our families. No child should be forced to witness violent acts against their caregiver. No parent should be afraid to send their child to daycare. And no child care worker should live in fear that they could be next just for doing their job. They are using public funds to do this, funds that are desperately needed to feed families and provide care for our children and seniors, to attack and terrorize our communities with impunity. It is appalling and it is outrageous. But today I can speak for our members of SEIU, child care workers, home care workers, nursing home workers, hospital workers, and say that we are with you, we stand with you, we will fight with you to the end. We understand what we are up against, but we are clear that when we are in solidarity with one another, protecting each other, looking out for one another, that we really can make a difference. Thank you. I'd like to bring up Nick Ramos from the Resurrection Project.
Okay, everyone, we've been listening into this press conference there. Again, just to give you the background, this morning, immigration enforcement officers followed a teacher at Rayito del Sol into the daycare and detained her in front of the children. So these leaders in the community have mobilized very quickly to say enough is enough, essentially, is what they're saying. Congressman Quigley said that the woman has a work permit, and yet she was still detained. Alderman Matt Martin said they still don't know where she is at this point in time, and they're asking for her to be released immediately. They've talked about the fact that they believe this is a blatant disregard for just regular norms in society. They called it a lack of humanity, even went so far as to say this is domestic terrorism coming into that daycare where children were present, and that it was not okay. One of the leaders there said she wants children to take pride in their heritage, not hide from it. Commissioner Bridget Degman said that people need to continue to document these incidents that are happening, and I can tell you that we here at our station do have the video from this incident, and we are going to show it to you later in the day, so look for that in the 4, 5, and 9 o'clock newscast. Representative Delia Ramirez says that she has filed an investigation in the House into this incident, and she also talked about a bill that's on its way for protected locations like daycare so that this doesn't happen in front of children. Commissioner Jessica Vasquez talked about the need for more people to join rapid response volunteer networks to get the word out to people about their rights in areas like this. And State Representative Lillian Jimenez referenced, and this was referenced several times, a 60 Minutes interview over the weekend with President Trump where he said that immigration enforcement efforts have actually not gone far enough. And each one of them that mentioned that says, if you look at what's happening in Chicago, and during that 60 Minutes interview, they did air footage from Old Irving Park where an enforcement effort took place in that neighborhood. It ended up going to court where there was pepper spray used in that area, and there were children on their way to a Halloween parade. So they're saying enough is enough, and we heard from several of them, again, moving forward after this incident that took place at Rayito del Sol Spanish Immersion Early Learning Center here in Chicago this morning. Again, we will have that video for you later on today in our newscast. But another situation that we are staying on top of right now. If you recall, yesterday there was a horrific plane crash that took place in Kentucky, a UPS plane that went down. The NTSB is now holding a press conference. Let's listen into that now.
And what your name is. Tom, you made the trip.
Thank you, sir. Member Inman, can you talk about a photo that we've seen and video as well of what appears to be an engine sitting on the side of a road or on the road? Is that in fact, do you believe that's the number one left side engine? And separately, you talked about the black boxes that you've identified them, and they should be able to withstand heat, but can you describe what they look like and what, if any, marks, sear marks, black marks there are on those black boxes?
Okay, the first question was basically the engine that's been seen in some photographs. We do believe that that is the engine from the left side of the plane. It is actually on the airfield, so it's not off the airport property. That correlates with the video that we've seen of it detaching from the airplane while it is in flight. We also know that a fire was occurring during that time, and so we're analyzing that. In fact, we have teams right now that are preparing to do the runway in what we call a FOD walk. That is foreign object debris. Obviously, the runways have been shut down, but we need to not only take drone coverage and video coverage of where every piece of this evidence is, but then we need to recover it and tag it, and those will give us even more pieces of information. So right now, it's still on the field. We're making arrangements for that evidence to be recovered and stored in a secure location. And once we are able to analyze it, for specialists, for things like that, but we do feel comfortable that we're going to get a lot of good information from it. What was your second part?
Judge, can you describe the physical condition of what you saw and how those black boxes actually look?
The physical condition of the black boxes. I've only seen one picture. You could easily tell that it was a black box, about two types of cylinders on top. Our specialists said they were able to easily identify that. We don't know until it gets to Washington, D.C. I will tell you that they're manufactured to a very specific standard. Luckily, they were not in a post-impact fire for multiple days or on the bottom of the ocean. So while the fire may have been intense, it is built to withstand that. And once we get them to D.C. and we can open them up and take the steps, and sometimes we have to take multiple steps. Now, it will be multiple, or at least several days before we have a readout of those, because as we take them apart, We need to let some of our groups go through and do what's called audition them, and then they'll come up with a potential or partial transcript looking for identifying markers that we need to delve into further while we're on the ground. So, and as always, we will never be releasing the actual audio of any of those conversations out of respect for those who are involved in the aircraft. Yes, sir.
Alex Capriello with News Nation. While the black boxes and the data recorders are certainly built to withstand heat and exposure and the sort of catastrophe that occurred here, can you give us an idea about the rest of the aircraft, the fuselage, if anything exists, and then perhaps even larger point, the difficulty for you and your investigators when there is a debris field that's half a mile long?
So the question is how the rest of the fuselage, the airplane, as it rests right now, what we may have seen, and how it impacts the investigation. We've seen some aerial videos and some photographs. The emergency management here, along with the first responders, have done an amazing job. We've been working with them since we've gotten on the ground. They have some command posts set up, and I just want to applaud them for not only the work they've done and the work they are doing and the courtesies they're providing us, along with the UPS staff and everyone here at the airport. But to answer the ultimate question, there are a lot of different parts of this airplane in different places. I mean, whenever you have a post-impact to not only structures but also to the terrain, you have to analyze why it came there, and then how do you recover it correctly in order to analyze it. So I can't give you a real good definition of what it is. There's a lot of different parts. It doesn't complicate it to where it's not recoverable. A mile and a half, a half a mile is a pretty large distance, but we have to be very cautious. The main thing we're also worried about are the safety of not only the investigators, but the first responders that are there. We know that there's been some shelter in places in the area. We also know that while the fire departments were working throughout the night, there were occasionally little flare-ups in different spots. So they're having to constantly monitor that to make sure it's safe for someone to get in. So it may not be the length of the debris field. It may be where the debris field is in, say, a recycling facility or another location, and the amount, of course, fuel that the plane was carrying. Those can all add to the complexity of an investigation. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Jackie Jeff from the Epic Times. Is there a chance that staffing shortages caused by the government shutdown in any capacity could be tied to this?
So the question was, are we aware of any staffing shortages because of the government shutdown? We are not at this time. SDF Tower, from what we can see and what we've been told, was at its proper complement. I don't have the exact records, but I will put you to the fact that we have formed groups in areas that we're focusing information on. We have not formed an ATC group. We have specialists in that, but at this point it has not elevated itself to the point to where we feel they need an entire working group. And I would go back to the same thing in regard to the shutdown. Our investigators have been working since the day it started. The shutdown occurred. I've been working every day since then. We've only recalled a few individuals yesterday just to handle some of the logistics of our travel and our movements. But we have everyone we need and then some in order to make sure we're performing this investigation. Yes, sir.
Dave Mattingly, Wade News in Louisville. I'm looking for some context. How rare is it that you see a plane with this much fuel on it going down and creating the fire that we saw here?
Okay, so the question is how much fire in regard to this fuel load, and how in the United States we don't see it very much, which is great, and it means that the recommendations, we've made over 15,000 recommendations in our 65-year history. We have about an 82% success ratio. We have a mantra that used to be in front of our training facility, and it's from tragedy we draw knowledge to improve the safety for all. And so for every tragedy we've had, we draw more knowledge, and we try to learn from that. And we hope that we don't repeat the same mistakes. So in this case, I'm sure we're going to learn some new things. We're going to make some recommendations and some findings. What they are yet, we do not know. But I would say a freighter that's fully loaded, that's going to Honolulu, is going to have a large amount of fuel. And that obviously was part of the post-accident response. Yes, sir.
What's the rotating speed of a fully fueled MD-11? How fast is it going to take off?
The question was, what is the rotation speed? Takeoff speed? 175, 180? I don't have the exact figures for you. I apologize. I'm not a pilot. We will be looking at that. Typically, you're looking at speeds in the 150s to 180s, 190s, but I don't want to give you a definitive number because I would be guessing. And some of those are based upon exactly what's occurring at what point of flight that it's occurring. So there's a lot of different things that go into it in addition to the weight and balance. All of these have been mapped out over decades to specifically know how much thrust and speed is needed to obtain lift and to achieve it, and if necessary, to do an emergency diversion. So we've had a lot of experience with that. I don't know at this point if it will be a factor, but it's certainly something we'll look at. Yes, sir.
Dylan Lovin, Associated Press. Was this flight delayed, and was maintenance being done on this flight before Tacoma?
So the question was this flight delayed or were maintenance being done before that? We, as part of the maintenance group, they will be going back and looking at every aspect of maintenance that was done on this plane and how many cycles since it's occurred. To date, UPS has indicated to us that it was not delayed and that there was not maintenance work done immediately before. Now, again, that is information that we will still collaborate and independently verify, but at least by first glance, we do not see that happening. I know it's been reported some places, but we have not found something to lead us into looking at an immediate pre-takeoff.
Two more questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you aware of any airworthiness directives that were out regarding MD-11 or the engine manufacturers?
The question is in regard to airworthiness directives regarding the engine or the actual aircraft. I'm not aware of any. We go through a very regimented process of things that we view and try to review: maintenance records, airworthiness directives, advisory circulars, service bulletins. To say that there's none would be probably very unlikely, because an aircraft that's been flying for that many years could have had multiple different generations. It will be something that we'll look at. We'll be confirming whether the work was done or how it was done and who did it. But at this point, we have not seen anything that's said we need to hone in on a specific area. One more question? Yes, sir.
Tom Regulus, WHAS here in Louisville. How much of your investigation focuses on the runway itself here at SDF, and will the runway remain shut down as you continue to investigate?
So the question is in regard to how much of our investigation will focus on the runway and how long it will be shut down. The runway itself, from what we have seen, was obviously being used continually. Louisville has a lot of operations every day. They have a really great crew that works on their operations, maintenance, and upkeep. We'll be looking at any type of factors, such as when they last did a FOD scan or whether there was good skid, whatever. A lot of different things go into the actual pavement. So right now, we're not seeing something that says we need to open up an airport working group. In regard to the closure of the runway, we're very cognizant. I mean, I was here 4 months ago, meeting with the safety staff. They invited me up, got to talk to the president of UPS Airlines and all of their safety staff. We were walking through a lot of different scenarios. And one of the things that struck me was, not only is this a company that moves freight, they are delivering life-saving drugs, postal products, food, supplements, you name it, that come through this hub every night. And so we've been emphasizing the need to make sure we're getting every piece of perishable evidence and doing it in the most diligent way, but at the same time, understanding that this investigation could slow down a lot of important products, not just for this company, but for Americans across the country and across the world. And I think we have to be cognizant of that. That's the reason why we were working so diligently today to try to do the mapping and to get the FOD walk. In regard to actually keeping the runway shut down, we do not shut down runways. It is the airport authority. Obviously, they have been working with us in a great fashion and are trying to do everything they can to make sure we have the information. But we are hopeful that we can turn over at least one of the runways shortly, and as soon as possible the other runway, while still preserving all the evidence. Thank you very much.
What about a timeline when you might have a preliminary report out?
So as we were listening in there to that press conference with the NTSB, giving us a little bit more information as to at least where things stand with them in terms of this UPS cargo plane that went down in Louisville, Kentucky yesterday, shortly after takeoff. Just so you know, the Louisville package handling facility there is the company's largest. So shortly after takeoff, if you think about it, this plane had just fueled up. So essentially, the attorney says that the plane acted kind of like a bomb. if you will, to the engine that was going. They had a fire on the left side, they say, that as it was trying to gain altitude, that the plane itself is hot, the engine was on fire, and the plane kind of acted like a bomb to it, and then you saw that big explosion in the air. So NTSB says that the engine is still on the airfield right now. They have had a crew of 28 people out in that field all day trying to find black boxes and things of that nature to assess what went wrong, look at the fuel, the level of fuel, the weight, the balance to what happened and to that plane going down so quickly there. We know that 9 people have died, and these numbers could be adjusted, but we also know that the University of Louisville Hospital says that 2 people are still in critical condition in their burn unit right now. 13 had been treated and discharged, and another hospital in that area says that they released 3 people. So again, the numbers could change here, but the Kentucky governor, Andy Beshear, has declared a state of emergency and mobilized the National Guard in an effort to try to free up some resources in the after effect of this horrible crash that took place there. One of the things that the NTSB representative who was speaking for the bulk of that press conference in the time we were listening said is that from tragedy, we draw knowledge to improve the safety of all, and we certainly hope that they are able to do that to prevent anything like that from ever happening again. But our thoughts are certainly with those who are affected directly, especially from what happened, these 9 lives that were taken yesterday and that UPS cargo plane. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. 2:28 right now. We want to take you back to Wall Street and specifically the big board so that we can see things. When we looked at this in the 1 o'clock hour, had to look back for our 2 o'clock hour just to see if things were still in the green here. And we see, yes, it is. You know, the last couple of days when we have looked at this board, we've been in the red right about this time. And as you can see, it's kind of dipped occasionally throughout the day, but at least since about noon, we've been in the green. So as I'm looking at things, this partially has to do with the U.S. Supreme Court looking at this case over President Trump's tariffs. The green that we're seeing has to do with some of the uncertainty there and the fact that the Supreme Court has some doubts about the tariff argument. And so we're seeing the Dow rise significantly today, almost to 300 points as a result of that. Also with some AI trade recovering here as well. So some things that are changing, and it's nice to see things in the green, at least for now. Obviously, we hope that it stays that way for quite some time here. Just kind of looking at what analysts are saying, they say we continue to see a sort of a debate on how effective the tariffs are, and we're not sure of the effect, of course, but the resolution of it and the price effect of it until the first quarter of next year. So that adds to this kind of what they say is the uncertainty that we have had over the last few days. But right now, sitting in the green, turning positive right now, also with AI stocks. So we'll take it and we'll see if we can keep it that way. It's 2:30 right now. We're going to take another quick break, and we have something really fun on the opposite side of it. $2.33 right now, and if you were with us yesterday, we talked with a representative from a local church here, Progressive Baptist Church, as they were mobilizing to have this effort where they wanted to feed 3,000 Chicagoans. They were putting all of the supplies together, and she said, hey, tomorrow we're going to be giving that food out. So we had the time and we wanted to check back in with them. You can see today is distribution day, and we just couldn't wait to see these smiles. It's beautiful to see this. Of course, we are in day 36, everyone, of the government shutdown. And so it's so important that we see community members doing what they can in their own way to be able to help people in this time of need. So many pantries have even said in recent days that they've been overwhelmed, that many of them had already a 70% increase this year. And so when you put a shutdown on top of that and the SNAP benefits ending last Saturday, that now you're seeing even more people than they have ever seen in need. So Progressive Baptist Church, congratulations on your effort. And you see here people coming to take those bags from them quick, fast, and in a hurry. They are actually back in an area where they were just a few months ago, I believe it was, where they did a by the block type of event in that area. It was for black businesses, and so they wanted to go back to that area and now help the people in that community. Of course, Progressive Baptist Church itself is at 3658 South Wentworth Avenue. But again, they wanted to go to this area where they had already done some serving and go back there. It's really a testament, and I said this yesterday to the woman that we spoke with, of the church being not just the people, and not just the building, but it's efforts like this that will take people far, that people will remember for many, many days, weeks, and years to come, that they are feeding people's souls, but also they are quite literally feeding people's bellies with these bags that they have put together now to distribute in that area. Here at the corner of 75th Street and King Drive, they were also going to 75th Street and St. Lawrence Avenue today as well to distribute bags of food to people in that area as well. Not only is it Progressive Baptist Church itself working with this, but some of the members of this community, maybe notable members of the community who have been able to help out in a significant way here. 6th Ward Alderman Will Hall helped with this effort. He's a community partner. And then also Monique and Melvin Rodriguez. They are the owners. If you have not heard their name, you may have seen their products in stores, and so I want to highlight it. It's community effort that they are now taking part in. They own Mael Cares, Mael Organics. It's a hair care product. It's in many of your CVS, your Walmart, anywhere else where you see hair care products. It's usually in pink bottles. They own that organization, or excuse me, that foundation, and they have Mael Cares as a part of their overall product brand, where they're able to go out and help with community efforts like this. So props to them for what they're doing. Monique and Melvin grew up right here in the city of Chicago, and they have amassed this multi-million-dollar corporation, and now they're giving back in this very special way here, helping people in this time of need, again, with Progressive Baptist Church as they make this effort to feed 3,000 families there on the south side. So love to see it. So glad that we were able to catch back up with them. It was a moment I was really waiting on to be able to see. So thank you also to our photographer, Stuart, who is out there, who was able to give us those pictures of what they are doing there. You know, we have covered a lot of ground today. We talked about, obviously, the government shutdown. We talked about elections that took place yesterday in several states, California, Washington, D.C., New York, New Jersey, and Virginia. But this I really didn't see coming. We've got to talk about murder hornets. I don't know a whole lot about them, but it has my attention. And so I want to bring in Alan Lawrence. He's a curator of entomology at Peggy Notebart Nature Museum of the Chicago Academy of Sciences. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
So I understand that there was a tragic incident that took place with these murder hornets, killing a father and son that were ziplining in Southeast Asia. I mean, how rare is that type of situation?
Yeah, this really was a tragic event for this family and their community, because this is not a common occurrence at all. the murder hornet is a colorful name for the northern giant hornet. And they can be pretty aggressive, but generally, if you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. So this is a pretty rare event.
Wow. Okay, so you said if you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. And obviously, we don't know all the details to this particular situation. Could it have been that they, in the zip line, went through a nest?
Yeah, I believe it may have occurred when they were climbing down from a tree after they finished ziplining, and they may have just accidentally stumbled upon a nest in the ground, maybe near the base of the tree.
Wow. And like I said, this was in Southeast Asia. Do we need to be concerned about murder hornets here?
Yeah, fortunately, we do not have northern giant hornet in the United States. There was a brief introduction of them. They were first spotted in Washington State in 2019, but through extensive effort to search and remove them, they have been successfully eradicated. They hadn't been seen for at least 3 years before they were declared eradicated by the USDA in 2024.
Is there a way to survive an incident like this, or a sting from one of these giant Asian hornets?
Yeah, so one sting itself, unless you have an allergy, is probably not going to be a huge concern. The issue is if you get hundreds of stings, like it sounds like happened in this case. So just generally, if you do encounter an aggressive wasp, calmly walk away from where you think the nest might be, and it'll leave you alone. But if you do accidentally disturb a nest and they come out in full force, just move quickly in a straight line as far away as you can get until you find an enclosed area. And you want to make sure to protect your head. So that might mean lifting up your shirt. You might expose some of your belly skin, but you want to protect your head from stings more than the rest of your body.
Yeah, priorities, I guess, in that type of situation. You know, I guess when I look at this, what would be the closest thing to this that we do encounter here?
Yeah, so there are some rather large wasps that we can find around here. The European hornet is one. Bald-faced hornets are another, and then there are cicada killers. The first two are social wasps that can be a little bit more aggressive, but again, leave them alone. They generally leave you alone. The cicada killers, these are very large wasps that are solitary, and they're very unlikely to sting, and if they do, you probably might not feel it.
When incidents like this happen, and we do report them in the news, do you feel like you get like overrun with questions, like with everyone thinking it's going to happen to them too?
Yeah, a little bit, especially, with the name murder hornet going really viral. So I try and make an effort to stick to their other common name, northern giant hornet, and really just sort of lay those fears to rest.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you all have on exhibit? Like you said, there's such an interest in these giant Asian hornets. Have you had them on exhibit, or do you have them on exhibit, or maybe some other things that actually draw people in?
Yeah, we haven't had them on exhibit. I mean, they are fantastical creatures. They are huge, so they really are really cool to observe, and there are people who do raise them for exhibits. But my favorite exhibit at the museum is our butterfly haven, where we have a greenhouse full of tropical butterflies just flying around, no glass between you and them, so you get to see them up close and personal. And we also have some beehives that a beekeeper keeps on our roof, and I'm just bringing that up because honeybees can be prey to the northern giant hornet.
Oh, okay. The circle of life. There's always something. One of the things, I guess, when I'm looking at this too, what are some misnomers about these giant Asian hornets that we just get wrong about them?
Yeah, something that we often don't consider is that a lot of wasps in general, not just them, like to eat sweet foods like fruit or nectar, and so they can be pretty good pollinators. A lot of them are predators as well, especially the northern giant hornet. So they can help keep more like pesky insects under control. So they can be beneficial in multiple ways.
A glass half full approach. There's always a way. Thank you so much, Alan. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Take care. It's 2:43. We'll be right back.
Hey, sorry, my phone, every battery.
Okay, 2:46 right now. I want to take you back to a different aspect of the immigration debate here in Chicagoland pertaining to Operation Midway Blitz. We spoke right at the beginning of our 1 o'clock hour with an attorney with the MacArthur Foundation as they are awaiting a decision regarding the conditions at the Broadview ICE facility. They allege, that people are having to stay there longer than they should, that they're having to sign away rights without any type of counsel present, that they are having to sleep in chairs sitting up, and so many other unsanitary conditions that they're having to live with there at the ICE processing center there in Broadview. But one of the other aspects of this that we've kind of delved into from time to time is the fact that people have spiritual rights as well. Last week we spoke to a father who was with a group that was trying to go into the facility over the weekend to give communion to the detainees who were there. And right now I want to bring in one of the representatives, also Sister Kristen, who is going to talk a little bit more about the Pope actually saying spiritual rights of migrant detainees must be respected. He just called for some deep reflection as it pertains to this matter, and I want to talk a little bit more about that right now. Sister Kristen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So I mentioned, that there was a group that was trying to go into the facility last weekend for Dia de los Muertos, and so many people who are in the facility who celebrate a holy holiday over the weekend, but they were denied access in, still had a prayer vigil outside. Give me your reaction to the Pope now speaking to the spiritual rights of migrant detainees directly.
We're really heartened to hear from Pope Leo that he is speaking to and really urging a moral conscience on this issue. The Coalition for Spiritual and Public Leadership, which organized the event, is a grassroots effort of people from all over the city who are really saying the same thing, that we are upholding the spiritual rights of those who are being detained, that we seek to give pastoral care and spiritual care, and that right is being denied right now. And so I personally, and many people I've talked to are just really very heartened that Pope Leo has added his voice.
Yeah, and address the timing of it coming after that effort, which I know you all have tried to go before, or that group has tried to go before, and has been denied before. But it did seem like, okay, you got orders or the order of preparation, a clearance from DHS, like, here's what you need to do to be allowed in, checked off all of those boxes, and then you were still denied. How does that feel?
Yes, we have tried to go through all the proper protocols. Every effort has been made to respond to what DHS has said is the protocol, and allowing pastoral visits has been common practice in the past. It's in line with DHS's policies. And so it was pretty heartbreaking to have that right be denied twice in a row, and to know that these people are not only going without so many other things, but also without the spiritual sustenance that we're trying to give them. And so I think the timing of the Pope's comments coming right after the People's Mass, right after such a large gathering on Dia de los Muertos, I am hoping will continue to call attention to this issue, both within Catholic communities and beyond.
Yeah, and do you think that it also shows that, I mean, the Pope is from Chicagoland, like that he watches what's happening right here?
Yes, it's nice to know that we're on his radar, and that what happens here matters to him and matters to the global church.
Yeah. Now, do you think the Pope will have any special insight or effect?
I don't know. We've already seen that the Pope being from Chicago is a real point of pride for Chicagoans. Mm-hmm. And so I guess my personal hope is that he will be keeping his eye on what's happening, and that his comments will perhaps inspire more people to pay attention and to get involved in advocating for human rights and God-given dignity.
Mm-hmm. Tell me what the moments were like. Did you still go out for the vigil that was held?
Yes, I was part of the delegation that did attempt to gain entry to distribute communion.
Mm-hmm. So tell me what those moments were like outside. Okay, you can't get in. I mentioned there was still a vigil held. What was that like?
It was very powerful to see 2,000 people gathered to pray together and to pray in solidarity with those on the other side of the walls. There was a real sense of both hope and grief, I think. A real lament over the impact that this administration's policies and actions are having in our communities. And for me, especially having the vigil happen the day after news had come out more clearly about the conditions inside of the facility, really kind of deepened the grief about not only the conditions, but the denial of the spiritual sustenance. But I would say it was a real mix of hope, of solidarity, and also of a space to hold the grief and the lament about the pain that our Chicago community is holding right now.
Wow. And the 2,000 people, I mean, what was the group made up of? Is that just your organization, or were there many other organizations that came out to join you all?
There were Catholics and beyond from all over Chicago. So it was a really diverse group. There were over 50 priests and religious sisters and members of religious communities, but there were people from parishes all over the city. And I know that there were other leaders from other faith communities, people of all ages. And so it was quite touching, because it was such a visual illustration of us all being one community, of all being the body of Christ.
Yeah, there's always some bright spot in even things that can take a darker turn, and being able to see community out there for sure is a bright spot. What is the prayer? What did you all pray for?
We prayed, of course, in solidarity with those being detained. We prayed for a shift in the policy. We prayed it for the families impacted, families being ripped apart by current detentions and deportations. Of course, we pray that we would be allowed to enter and that pastoral care will be allowed in the facility. And I think we prayed for a change, for a welcoming of the migrant, which is what our faith calls us to, for that sense of hospitality and of a different approach to welcoming the migrant in our midst.
Yeah. When you all are out there, I just wonder, did you ever have a concern for you all's safety?
In my experience, both of the times that we've been there, both the Eucharistic procession that happened a couple weeks ago and then the People's Mass were very peacefully planned, very, very well orchestrated. So I didn't have a fear for my safety, and I think it's really important that our commitment is to peaceful, nonviolent, and persistent resistance of what is happening. So I think the power of that many people gathering in prayer really did feel very peaceful.
Yeah. What will you all do as more holidays approach?
So we're still discerning what that might be. Our coalition, our members are continuing to meet and to discern what next steps might need to be taken. But there's a parable in the Gospel of Luke that we like to use as kind of a rallying point, which is that of the persistent widow who had approached an unjust judge who wouldn't hear her case, and she just kept coming back, and out of her persistence eventually she was listened to. And so we're kind of using that as an image for our own commitment to continue persisting, to continue resisting, and to continue standing in solidarity with our brothers and sisters on the other side of those walls.
Sister Kristen, thank you so much for your time today and sharing a bit of you all's mission with us today.
Thank you.
Take care. It's 2:56. We'll be right back. 2:58, everyone, so we're almost out of here at 3 o'clock, but I want to take you to a couple of other live shots before we go here. Let's go back to the official Christmas tree for the city of Chicago. The crane has now moved, and the Christmas tree is on the right side of your screen there. It's now been lowered down into Millennium Park. The 112th annual City of Chicago Christmas tree in Millennium Park celebration will be on Friday, November 21st at 6 p.m. The lighting ceremony will be held there. They will remain lit through Sunday, January 11th, 2026. Can't believe we've made it this far in the year, but it's great to see something that will give people a lot of smiles here in the city. That tree came from Glenview. The Mason family will be able to go out there and know that they have contributed to the history of the city with the tree that came from their very own yard. And before we go, we also want to go back to the food giveaway, the distribution that's happening there on the south side. We see members of the Progressive Baptist Church out giving food to people. Of course, after SNAP benefits ended over the weekend, they wanted to mobilize and be able to give back to the community in a meaningful way, and they are definitely doing that. We checked in with them yesterday as they were putting the food together, and now they are hitting the streets to make sure
the transportation of drugs, particularly this is almost all exclusively cocaine, to America is appropriate. But again, showing by interdiction and drug recovery and the fact that the individuals on the boats are actually known narco-terrorists would sure go a long way in convincing a lot of Americans, and for that matter, the rest of the world.
Does it sound like... How do we know they're not making mistakes? I mean, we've heard from the former chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, who said under international law this would be charged as crimes against humanity. Doesn't that trouble you?
I think that I think our intelligence assets are quite good, and I'll go back to what I said earlier without getting into any more detail. Even accepting the fact if these were bad guys carrying drugs on boats, and we do some interdiction, why there's not then bringing these individuals before a court of law and showing the world, frankly, the drugs that were interdicted. Sure, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Is there any plan to take Maduro out of the power? Is there any plan from the USA to take Maduro out of the power?
There is no legal basis in any legal opinion that we've been discussing that addresses Venezuela in any shape or form.
Would you be comfortable, though, if that was part of the U.S. strategy to try to push Maduro out of power?
I've said repeatedly that Maduro, and not just in terms of American recognition, but roughly 50 nations around the world, is not even recognized as the legal leader of Venezuela at this point. And I think we missed a huge opportunity, again, when Venezuelans in numbers that were probably mid-60s% came out against, with frankly, threat of personal violence against them to vote against Maduro. And the fact that we didn't rally the region at that point was, I think, in retrospect, a huge mistake. And I pressed the Biden administration at that point.
Senator, some of your colleagues have suggested land strikes in Colombia. Do you see that possible?
All right, we wanted to make sure we were able to show that to you here on Live Now from Fox, as we have the stakeout camera where certain lawmakers are able to step up and make remarks. They're inside this building in Washington, D.C. Of course, we know this is all after Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth briefed a group of top congressional members, all behind closed doors today. This following President Trump's order for a wave of unprecedented U.S. military strikes against alleged drug boats that are raising the specter of a new war. And so legal analysts have broadly described these strikes as potentially illegal under both U.S. and international law, in part because it hasn't been authorized by Congress. But of course, we'll still continue to keep our eyes on that as it's ongoing here on Live Now from Fox. In the meantime, I want to continue on with our other top stories that we're following. And so, as we said a bit earlier today, monitoring these live events as they're getting underway. Right now, speaking, we have the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, speaking